Hi, I'm Ryan French. I'm going to be speaking about the cross-cultural adaptation theory. Um, the theory was designed by someone named Young Kim, who was a Korean immigrant, and it really tries to give some structure and understanding to the process that immigrants go through, or sojourners is a term that's often used about it too. But basically, when we take someone from a culture that they have grown up in and is native to them, and we relocate that person into a foreign environment, whether it's literally foreign or not, is not necessarily the focus. But the idea is that you remove someone from the culture they've grown up in, and they have been immersed into a new culture, which is referred to as the host culture. And so, most often, this theory is referring to actual immigrants or people who may be temporarily relocated into a dramatically different culture, such as someone who's assigned an overseas work assignment for a couple years or something like that. So the idea behind the theory was looking at someone who is not yet left their home culture, and then the process of someone who's fully acculturated into a new host society, and just analyzing the journey that person takes from point A to point B, really, and getting from the beginning to the end. Um, in the theory, he lays out several different stages that someone goes through and several different factors that are important to making a successful assimilation process. And so we're gonna discuss some of those, some of the gaps in the research right now, and some of the areas that need to be expanded on. But the focus of this theory and what distinguishes it from a lot of other methods of analyzing immigration and assimilation and similar issues is that it is very focused on the internal components of the individual. So rather than comparing two societies and looking at the compatibility of the sending and receiving culture, it instead looks at someone internally and the processes that they go through in order to make the full assimilation. And so the idea is that someone is sort of at odds with themselves the entire time, and deciding how much of their own culture they want to give up, how much of the new culture they want to assimilate into their own. So that's a little overview about the theory. What we're going to get into now is the gaps that are in the understanding of the theory right now. So although Young Kim has been the primary author and the person who founded the theory in a formal sense, many other people have addressed that issue since he has coined the term. And outside of the formal, name of cross-cultural adaptation theory, immigration and multicultural assimilation and just diversity in groups has also been analyzed from a lot of angles. So when you look at the work that's out there right now for those types of people, a lot of people still have a resistance, or maybe even caused by ignorance, but an oversimplification of the issue. And so while Kim's focus is on the fact that really what's important to a successful assimilation is getting that individual to go through the right processes in their mind and have the right mentality and overcome the mental obstacles. What a lot of people still focus on is the compatibility issue between two cultures. So when someone, if they're giving counsel to someone, they might say, your culture likes these types of things, or you're used to this type of behavior, and the new culture is a little different in these things, and they would coach them on those cultural differences rather than focusing on the journey that the person needs to take inside. Secondly, one of the other shortcomings of the current research is that a clearly defined desired outcome doesn't yet exist. So if we can at least get on the same page of knowing that we need to work within an internal process with someone, kind of in a psychological approach, the advice that needs to be given to that person doesn't yet exist in a formal setting. So basically, if an end goal of this theory is to arrive at a point where we can say that there's a prescribed pattern or method that one should undertake when they're going to move into a new culture, then we want to communicate that to people so that they can be prepared to do that transition. Right now, that advice, if you had someone's attention, it doesn't exist. There's not a consensus on this is what we should tell people to help them successfully transition. Um, Secondly, there's also a lack of information about the actual effects of demographics. So um, the differences between people just arriving or arising from the natural difference between two types of people is what throws the theory off and the observations off. There's not a clear explanation as far as, well, how is this different for people from this country or people who are in their 50s compared to people in their 20s and things like that. Um, and so that would be beneficial, because the more that it could be profiled, then the more targeted advice could be given to people. And finally, there's not a good recommendation for maximizing the integration performance yet. So what that means is that, referring to earlier, if we could have someone's full attention and say, sir, you need to follow steps 1, 2, and 3, and also to address the receiving society and let them know which behaviors they could take to make the transition easy on people, that consensus doesn't exist yet. We're going to transition now and discuss the consensus that does exist on the theory. And a couple of those important points are, number one, everyone that's working on this does want that good recommendation to be defined. It's kind of a understood goal of the theory, is that if we can consolidate the research that's done and the advice that can be prescribed from that, that would be the most desired outcome from the theory. And so there's a strong consensus on that. And secondly, what everyone who is a scholar around the theory agrees on is that it is very much more so about the psyche and the internal struggles that someone goes through rather than anything else. So the real focus of the theory is on getting someone mentally prepared to take on this journey. Some areas of debate surrounding the theory are how much change an immigrant should undergo, and how much of their own culture they should be willing to alter in order to fit into a new society. The second is the level of impact created by a failed assimilation. There's not a clear consensus on that. If someone doesn't follow the prescription that's derived from this research, what will be the consequences? Thirdly, a host culture is going to offer good and negative, and so sometimes it would be idyllic for the immigrant to only adapt the positive aspects of the culture that they're assimilating into, and there's not a clear understanding yet of how to encourage assimilation and acculturation while blocking out the influence of the negative aspects of that society. And finally, the area of debate is the universality of the principles from the theory. So while it would be desirable to have a theory that applies to everyone, it's not yet quite agreed upon as to whether that is completely possible. Some of the methods and problems affecting the research. Number one, like we mentioned earlier, is that diversity exists between all people regardless of their demographic background. So if you were to take two 25-year-old white American males from the same town with similar socioeconomic upbringings, they're still going to embark on the acculturation process differently, and they're going to face very different internal struggles and challenges. So as of right now, there's not a clear way to prescribe advice to a group of people just based on their demographic information. Now, one of the methods that's been developed to overcome this is there are 21 theorems that Kim has come up with, designed to kind of level the playing field and level the understanding between these differences. Finally, in summary, and the potential application of this theory is that it's all about taking somebody from the beginning to the end of their journey and proving what tactics are the most efficient and effective for completing an acculturation process. So when we could look at that journey and come up with the most effective way for it to be taken, then we'd be able to educate the immigrants as well as the receiving societies as far as properly performing that procedure. So the implications would span out to social workers as well as public policymakers who could work to educate the general public to help make these transitions easier for immigrants and help them to more quickly become productive, contributing members of society, which would, of course, benefit both the immigrant and the host culture. That is everything. So thank you very much.